Take my lips, O Lord, and speak through them. Take our minds, O Lord, and think through them. Take our hearts, O Lord, and set them on fire with love for you. Amen. Please be seated. I knew there was something wrong with the gospel reading. It just wasn't long enough, you know? If you have walked past the pond this week, you may have noticed something. The water level is lower than it's been. The weir has been struggling again quietly and without any announcement, and the result is that more of the pond bottom is visible than usual. The mud is exposed. The edges are soft and dark and not particularly inviting. It's the kind of thing most of us will walk past without stopping. But stay with that mud for a moment. The gospel will meet us there. Jesus and his disciples were walking along when they saw a man who had been blind from birth. And before anyone paused to consider the man himself, his name, his experience, what he might need, the disciples have already framed a question. Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents? This is a question with a very long life. We still ask it. Right now, in our national life, there is a conversation about whether acetaminophen taken during pregnancy might be linked to autism in some children. And whatever the science ultimately says, I've watched that conversation land on parents, particularly mothers of children with autism, not as a question, but as a verdict. Ancient mud, stirred up again in their spirits, and it has not settled easily. And the disciples' question is not a historical curiosity, it is alive and well. And it is causing suffering, and the gospel speaks directly into it. Neither this man nor his parents sinned, Jesus said. Just like that. No hedge, no qualification, no pastoral softening. The moral arithmetic does not apply here, he says. Now, I want to be clear about what Jesus is not saying. He is not saying that our choices have no consequences. Of course they do. That is part of what it means to be responsible creatures. But he is saying that the leap from this person suffers to this person or someone else close to them has sinned is a leap the gospel will not take with us. Suffering is not a verdict. Disability is not a punishment. Difference is not a moral failing. I was born with sight in only one eye. I have never once asked what sin caused it. I have never experienced my vision as a diminishment or a sentence or a sign of something wrong at the beginning. Now, when I learned that others had a greater perception of depth, I began to understand why it is I'm so bad at sports. But the way I see is simply how I have always seen the world. It is, in fact, the only way I have ever seen the world. If the disciples had met me on the road, they might have asked their question about sin. And Jesus would have said to them, neither this man nor his parents sinned. And then, unhurried and unbothered, he would have moved on to what actually matters. Now, here is what Jesus does next, and I want you to stay with it rather than rush past it. He does not speak sight into the man. He does not lay clean hands on clean eyes. He bends down, spits on the ground, and makes mud with his saliva and the dirt beneath his feet, and he puts it on the man's eyes. Sit with that image for a minute. God in human form, kneeling in dirt, making mud, spreading it. And we have been spending Lent around this pond learning to take mud seriously. You see, the pond doesn't transition gracefully from winter to spring. It goes through mud, exposed and unhurried, and the mess is not a failure of the process, but part of it. Seeds need mud, new growth requires it, and the earth doesn't apologize for the condition it's in. And now, here is Jesus, the one John calls the Word through whom all things were made, and when he decides to heal, he reaches for dirt. He reaches for the ground. The earth doesn't just witness the miracle, it participates in it. The church has a word for what we are, rooted in the creation story, and the word is Adama, earth creature. We are, in the most literal and unreducible sense, animated dust. And Jesus doesn't reach past our dust nature to heal us. He heals us through it. This is not incidental. This is a theological claim about where healing comes from, not from some clean, disembodied realm above the mess, but from the mud, from the stuff that is low and dark and soft at the edges and not particularly inviting to walk through. The earth doesn't apologize for the condition it's in, and neither, it turns out, does God. The man who had just received sight for the first time in his life is then hauled before the Pharisees. They question him, they call his parents, they question him again. It's almost comic in its bureaucratic anxiety. They are so urgently invested in understanding this event well enough to control what it means that they seem not to notice what the event actually is. A man who was blind can see, and they want minutes of the meeting. The man keeps saying the same thing. I don't know. I can't explain it. One thing I know, I was blind, and now I see. And he's not being evasive exactly. He is being precise. He is telling them only as much as he knows, which is everything that matters and nothing that they can audit. He doesn't offer certainty he doesn't have. He just says with his own experience, he just stays with his own experience and refuses to abandon it under pressure. And this is a kind of faithfulness. Not the certainty of doctrine, not the confidence of argument, but the simple, stubborn willingness to say, I know what happened to me. You can drive me out of the room, but you cannot take this from me. And they do drive him out. And here the story does something almost unbearably beautiful. Jesus hears that they drove him out, and Jesus goes to find him. And what a beautiful response to a horrible act. Jesus, who has already healed this man and moved on, hears that this man has been cast out alone, newly sighted, but without his community. And he goes looking for him. He says, do you believe in the Son of Man? The man says, who is he, sir? Tell me, so that I may believe. And Jesus says, you have seen him. The one speaking with you is he. Think about what Jesus says to him, not that you have heard my voice, not that you have felt my presence, you have seen him. This man, who just this morning could not see at all. The first face to look on him without judgment was the face of the one who gave him eyes to see. The gaze that seeks us is not one trying to manage us. It's not the Pharisees' gaze auditing our explanations. It's not the disciples' gaze looking for someone to blame. It is the gaze that heard that this man had been driven out and came to find him. And the ones who cannot be healed in this story are not the ones who cannot see. They are the ones who are certain that they already do, certain about who deserves suffering, certain about who belongs and who doesn't, certain about whose experience can be audited and dismissed, That is the blindness that Jesus names at the end, and it is, John suggests, the harder condition to heal. We've been watching our pond this Lent for what it can teach us about God's character. Well, the pond receives what comes: winter, mud, dropped water levels, the unglamorous in-between of early March, without rejecting any of it. And Christ does what the pond does. He receives this man, cast out and alone, and comes to where he is. Not once the situation has been resolved, but in the middle of the expulsion, in the middle of the mud. The water level at our pond is low right now, and the mud is showing, and most of us have walked past it without stopping, and that's all right. We're busy. There's a lot to walk past. But this week, if you have a moment, even just a moment, go stand at the edge where the water has pulled back and the earth is exposed. Stand in the Lenten mud of early March in Cold Spring Harbor, and let it say what it has always been saying, what Jesus knew when he reached down to make it. I am the ground you are made of. I am not the punishment. I am the medicine. I am the stuff through which the healing comes. God of mud and mercy, who reaches into the earth to open what has been closed, free us from the ancient habit of assigning blame to suffering, and from the fear that our mess disqualifies us from your care. When we are driven out, come find us. When the mud is stirred up in our spirits, be present in it, as you have always been present in the ground. Through Christ, who knelt in the dirt and healed with what was already there. Amen.